At the stroke of midnight hour, when the whole world sleeps, India awakes to light and freedom. Jai Hind, we, the cadets of St. Anthony's College, are proud to present a virtual celebration of the Republic Day, which includes a number of performances. To begin with, we have our principal, Brother Albert Longley Dakhar, who would enlighten us with his words.
Dear professors, staff, students, and my fellow Indians, I have the distinguished privilege of conveying my warmest greetings to each one of you on this celebration of our 72nd Republic Day, marking the coming into effect of our country's constitution. As citizens of the Republic of India, we take pride in our country's unstinting progress in spite of the challenges and hurdles that came in its path. We began our march more than 70 years ago with reduced to a third of our might and wealth by the imperial masters who dominated our country today. 70 odd years later, we have reached heights many have thought impossible. Our country is the second most populous country with over 138 crores of people. We are the seventh largest country by land and are considered to be the most populous democracy in the world. Myriads of languages and dialects, cultures and traditions, religious practices and beliefs thrive within the boundaries of our great nation. We boast of an economy that has survived disastrous times when those of others collapsed or came to a standstill. Our country has seen success and breakthroughs over the years in the field of science, technology, and medicines. We are neck to neck with other countries in many notable areas. And all this has been made possible through the existence of one important document that sits at the apex of all our country's laws and might, the Constitution of India. It took more than 200 learned and stellar men and women and nearly 3 years to draft this great document that transformed the princely states and the territories of India and all their divided inhabitants into one nation bound together under one overarching identity, Indians. Today, as we celebrate our Republic Day, it shall do us all good to revisit the significance of what our forefathers and mothers have done in giving to us the Constitution. The Constitution of India is the very backbone of a country that calls itself a republic. Without it, our claim to democracy would die a natural and logical death in the face of such an absence. Our laws and jurisdiction would fall apart at the seams, for the constitution of any country is the embodiment of its fundamental rules, regulations, and principles, and it is a reflection of the myriad of cultures and traditions that give its uniqueness. The Constitution ensures the stability of the country in the face of threats, dangers, and calamities. In this regard, it forms the bedrock on which a country is built and given shape. It sets appropriate limits and boundaries to the government's interaction, decision-making process, and implementation of programs and policies. In light of this, it is understood that the Constitution exists to ensure the proper, appropriate, and adequate distribution of powers to its various functionaries, such as the Parliament, the executive houses, and the judiciary, to guarantee that a country not only exists but thrives in the best, safest conditions possible. So, in celebrating the country's 72nd Republic Day, we are in essence also celebrating the success of the Constitution of our country in ensuring the freedom, liberty, rights, security, success, and happiness of every single citizen under the fold and boundary of our country. We owe our debts in gold to members of the Constituent Assembly that was formed in 1947 to draft this great and abiding document, which is our country's soul and spirit. Their sacrifices in terms of time and energy expended in drafting and refining the various articles and clauses of the Constitution, their contribution to shape and form of the Constitution, their conviction of the authority, rigorousness and efficacy of what they have drafted have all borne rich fruits today, and we as the recipients of such an unmitigated generosity should do our unstinting best in turn to honor, value, and protect the Constitution at all costs. It is our undivided duty and responsibility to abide by its laws and to allow our fellow Indians to enjoy the rights that it provides for them as it does for us. Personally, I see the Constitution as the hub for which emerge spokes that have made our country what it is today. Remove the hub and everything falls apart. Temper with it and the wheel begins to wobble. Reshape it and the spokes will lose their alignments. Protect it and we all shall grow stronger, even as a country achieves greater heights inspired, influenced, and guided by our glorious Constitution. Our Republic Day celebration may be muted due to the pandemic, but it has not been defeated. Our celebration may look devoid of pomp and festivities, but it is not without significance and sincerity. For it is not in outward show of fanfare wherein lies the essence of our celebration, but in how we treat each other in light of what the Constitution has guaranteed. Today, if we have truly treated each other as brothers and sisters and have shown respect for our fellow countrymen's culture, beliefs and tradition, then our celebration is far from muted. It has attained, for a fact, a greater significance and value. So come, my fellow countrymen, join me in upholding the Constitution of our country, even as it upholds us by its laws. Jai Hind and thank you.
Up next, we have a sweet performance from Kengkhor Shishamailenggep, who is compared to the Nightingale of India.
Itu Next up, we have a documentation on the Constitution of India presented by the third year cadets.
Jai Hind. Taking freedom in mind, faith in souls, and memories in our heart, let's salute the nation and the freedom fighters on this Republic Day.
India, also known as Bharat, is a home for one of the oldest civilizations on planet Earth, with a recorded history dating back to over several thousand of years. India is blessed with rich diverse culture, natural resources, and a strength of over 1 billion people to flourish as an economically and technologically powerful nation alongside with the today's leading nation of the world.
India achieved independence from the British on August 15, 1947, after many decades of struggle led by many leaders
such as Sarojini Naidu, Mangal Pandey, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Bhagat Singh, Subhash Chandra Bose. The Indian independent movement that was led by Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, also known as Mahatma Gandhi, is characterized as non-violent civil disobedient movement which ultimately led India to its independence. When India got its independence, it was stated as constitutional monarchy. Although independent, India was still technically an independent dominant of the British Commonwealth.
India did not have any permanent constitution. The laws were still based on older acts before independence, that is Government of India Act 1935.
To drive for governance and sovereignty, a drafting committee led by Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar and 7 other members was formed on 28 August 1947 to draft a permanent constitution for India. It took 2 years, 11 months and 18 days for the Constituent Assembly to finalize the constitution.
The drafting committee led by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar submitted a drafted constitution of India to the President of the Constituent Assembly on 21st February 1948. The third and the final reading of the draft was completed on 26 November 1949, where the signature of the President of the Assembly was appended to it and the constitution was declared as passed. And thus on this day, that is 26 November, we celebrate Constitution Day. The provision of the constitution finally came into force from 26 January 1950, which the nation celebrates as the Republic Day.
On this day, India ceased to be a dominion of British rule. This day for India marks the beginning of new era of Indian governance and legal system,
under which India was declared as democratic, sovereign, later as a socialist and a secular republic. This assured citizens justice, liberty, equality and fraternity.
After almost 3 years of toil, India has the largest constitution and is one of the most flexible and most rigid constitution in the world.
Next up, we have an elegant dance performance by Cadet Chutarti Riyang.
ऐ वतन मेरे वतन ऐ वतन आबाद रहे तो आबाद रहे तो वतन वतन मेरे आबाद रहे तो ऐ वतन वतन मेरे आबाद रहे तो ऐ वतन वतन मेरे आबाद रहे तो मैं जहाँ रहूँ जहाँ में याद रहे तो मैं जहाँ वतन मेरे वतन ऐ वतन मेरे वतन तू ही मेरी मंजिल है पहचान तुझे से तू ही मेरी मंजिल है पहचान तुझे से पहुंचूं मैं जहां भी मेरे बुनियाद रहे तो पहुंचूं मैं जहां भी मेरे बुनियाद रहे तो ऐ वतन वतन मेरे आबाद रहे तो मैं जहां रहूं जहां मैं याद रहे तो ऐ वतन मेरे वतन ऐ वतन मेरे वतन तुझ पे कोई गम की आँच आने नहीं दो तुझ पे कोई गम की आँच आने नहीं दो कुर्बान मेरी जान तुझ पे शाद रहे तो कुर्बान मेरी जान तुझ पे शाद रहे तो ऐ वतन वतन मेरे आबाद रहे तो मैं जहाँ रहूं जहाँ मैं याद रहे तो ऐ वतन मेरे वतन ऐ वतन मेरे वतन आबाद रहे तो आबाद रहे तो ऐ वतन मेरे वतन आबाद रहे तो
We all know that knowledge is power. To enlighten the citizen of this great nation, presenting to you a talk on GST by L. Khongsit, Additional Commissioner.
Welcome, friends. I will deliver a talk on the Goods and Services Tax, also known as GST in short. My name is Shri L. Khongsit, Additional Commissioner of Taxes, Government of Meghalaya. My presentation plan consists of history and introduction, design of GST, main features of GST law, and the benefits of GST. Modern indirect taxation in India started in the early 20th century with the imposition of excise duty on salt, sugar, and motor spirit, etc. The Central Excise Act was formulated in 1944 and it levied tax at the manufacturing stage of goods. Then the service tax was implemented in 1994 for levy of tax on services. Both these taxes administered by the central government underwent gradual changes till their subsummation into the GST in 2017. Sales tax, which was administered by the state governments, was first introduced in India in 1930 in the then province of Bombay, and it was levied on sales of tobacco only in the urban and suburban areas of Bombay. Thereafter, sales tax was replaced by value-added tax in 2005, and value-added tax was subsumed under the GST in 2017. The then indirect taxation laws, like the central excise duty, the service tax, and the sales taxes imposed by the state governments, like the value-added tax, they existed in their own spheres. By this, I mean that the tax paid under one taxation law is not available as input tax credit under the tax payable in a different taxation law. The embedded taxes levied by the center and the states are also not available as input tax credit for certain taxes that were not sales taxes like luxury tax, entertainment tax, cesses and surcharges. I will give a brief explanation. When a hotelier starts his hotel, he has to make purchases of furniture, he has to make purchases of bathroom fittings, the hotel linen, the television sets, the fan, the AC, for which he has to pay value-added tax. But when he pays the luxury tax to the government, he doesn't get to avail input tax credit of the value-added tax he paid on his inputs. And he has to pay the luxury tax in full. Therefore, what the hotelier does is he will pass on the cost of input tax to the consumer. And the final tax burden is borne by the ultimate consumer. Moreover, under the earlier tax regime, we had the Central Sales Tax, which was a central government taxation act but levied by the state governments. The Central Sales Tax was levied on the interstate sales of goods. The state from where the goods originated levies the Central Sales Tax on the destination state. Meghalaya, being a state that does not have much industrial production, had to import most of the goods from outside the state. And the Central Sales Tax paid by the trader who import the goods from outside the state was not available as input tax credit for payment of the value-added tax. Hence, the trader passes on the Central Sales Tax to the consumer, and VAT is levied on the Central Sales Tax. Thus, there was tax on tax, and all this led to the increase on the tax incidence on the consumer. The above anomalies resulted in cascading effect of tax on tax, thereby increasing the final value of the goods and services payable by the consumer. The introduction of GST was a very significant step in the field of indirect tax reforms in India. GST amalgamated a large number of central and state taxes into a single tax. It mitigated cascading effect as it has reduced the number of taxes and also the tax on tax or the double taxation in a major way. And it paved for the establishment of a common national market. The prominent countries that have implemented GST are France, Canada, Malaysia, Singapore, and New Zealand, amongst others. These are the multiple number of central taxes and the multiple number of state taxes that have been subsumed into a single act, the GST. But even after the implementation of GST, certain goods were kept outside GST and were still levied either by the central or the state governments. Alcohol for human consumption. The power to tax remains with the state government. Then 5 petroleum products, crude oil, diesel, petrol, natural gas, and aviation turbine fuel. These have been included under the GST, but tax under GST has not yet been levied till such time the GST Council decides. Then tobacco. It is tax under GST, but the power to levy additional excise duty is still vested with the central government. Also, entertainment tax levied by local bodies is kept outside GST. The administration of GST is by both the central and the state governments. The processes of registration, payment and returns are all conducted on the GSTN common portal. All the processes, including refunds, are conducted online. This ensures minimal interface between the taxpayer and the tax officials. Also, under the GST law, there is a timeline for most of the procedures to be conducted and to be approved by the tax officials. The CGST and SGST Acts are a mirror image of each other. By this, we mean that both these acts, though they are different taxation acts, but they have similar provisions, except in the case of certain sections dealing with classes of officers and dealing with insertions, omissions, substitutions, and repeal of the earlier taxation acts that have been subsumed under the GST. The main features of the GST Act are that GST is levied on supply of goods and services. All transactions and processes are done through electronic mode. Hence, it is a non-intrusive tax administration. To acquire registration, a supplier must be in possession of a permanent account number issued under the Income Tax Act. The threshold for compulsory registration is rupees 10 lakhs at the initial stage of implementation of GST, 10 lakhs per annum for special category states, and 20 lakhs per annum for other states. Then after the central and the state governments gained certain experience after implementation of GST, the GST Council decided that the threshold for registration was to be raised to exceeding rupees 20 lakhs for most special category states like Meghalaya, Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, and other special category states, but most big states have opted for a threshold exceeding rupees 20 lakhs for suppliers of services or a mixture of goods and services. But if a supplier supplies exclusively goods, then the threshold is exceeding rupees 40 lakhs per annum. The GST laws also has a provision for voluntary registration. This option is given for those suppliers whose turnover has not exceeded the threshold for compulsory registration, but still they wish to obtain registration under the GST Act, mostly for the purpose of availing input tax credit. In case an applicant for registration under the GST Act has furnished all the documents, including the Aadhaar number, then deemed registration is allowed in 7 common working days if the proper officer does not take any action on the application. Input tax credit, which is the heart and soul of every value-added tax system, is available on taxes paid on all procurements, except a few specified items. The Indian GST is known as the dual GST. It has 3 components. CGST, which is the Central Goods and Services Tax, administered and collected by the central government on intrastate sales of goods and services. Then the State Goods and Services Tax and the Union Territory Goods and Services Tax, which is administered and collected by the respective state governments or the Union Territory governments for the Union Territories with their own legislatures, and IGST, which is levied and collected on all interstate supplies of goods and services. The collected IGST revenue is distributed between the states as per the provisions of the IGST Act. The total tax rate under the IGST is the sum total of CGST plus SGST. There is a particular class of taxpayers known as composition taxpayers. These taxpayers whose turnover does not exceed rupees 25 lakh per annum for special category states and rupees 1 crore for other states, they are allowed the option to pay tax at composition rate. The composition rate is a fixed rate. Such categories of taxpayers, if they are traders and manufacturers, and if they have opted for payment of tax at composition rate, then they have to pay tax at 1%, which is 0.5% CGST plus 0.5% SGST. Service providers are allowed to pay tax at a fixed rate of 6%, 3% CGST plus 3% SGST. Restaurants service providers are allowed to pay tax at 5%, 2.5% CGST plus 2.5% SGST. But there is a condition that such composition taxpayers are not allowed to avail input tax credit. Under GST, there are 4 tax rates, 5%, 12%, 18%, and 28%. Then there is a separate tax rate for precious metals, like 3% for gold and jewelry, and 0.5% for rough diamond. Then some goods and services are exempted. In addition to these 4 tax rates, there is also the GST cess, which is levied on sin goods and luxury goods. Sin goods are goods like cigarettes, and luxury goods are goods like cars and certain other goods, where GST compensation cess is levied for the purpose of compensating the states if there is any shortfall of revenue due to implementation of GST. The main features of GST is the input tax credit. The requirements for a registered person to avail input tax credit is that he should be in possession of tax invoice or debit note or such other document as may be prescribed. He must have received the goods or services or both. The tax charged in respect of such supply has been paid to the government, either in cash or through utilization of input tax credit. Then there are certain purchases where input tax credit is not allowed. ITC is not allowed except if it results in the supply of the same category of goods or services. On the purchase of motor vehicles, input tax credit is not allowed except when the motor vehicles are used for resale of the same motor vehicles, or are used for transportation of goods and passengers, or for imparting training on driving, etc. Then input tax credit on purchase of food and beverages, outdoor catering, beauty treatment, health services, cosmetic and plastic surgery, works contract services is also not allowed except if it results in the same supply of such goods and services. Take the case of outdoor catering. A person who made purchase of, let's say, oil and other taxable items to produce food, and such food is used in outdoor catering, then the input tax credit, input tax paid on the purchase of oil and other taxable inputs is not allowed. Beauty treatment. Take the case of, say, an actor who had undergone beauty treatment to improve his looks and has paid GST on the beauty treatment. He will not be allowed to avail the input tax he paid on beauty treatment to offset the tax liability on the modeling service or the advertisement service, and so on. The benefits of GST. It has resulted in eliminating cascading of taxes or tax on tax. It has, because of the removal of cascading effect, it has resulted in overall reduction in prices. It created a common national market because the IGST paid on interstate transactions is available as input tax credit in the state where the goods and services are consumed. It has resulted in giving benefits to small taxpayers through the composition tax scheme. It is a self-regulating tax system because it provides for input tax credit, and a taxpayer will always declare his purchases as he is now able to avail input tax credit for all the taxes he paid on the inputs. And due to the online computerized system, it has resulted in a non-intrusive tax administration system. It is a much simplified tax regime because it has reduced multiplicity of taxes. It is a consumption-based tax. The tax accrues to the place where the goods and services are consumed. It has abolished CST. Exports are zero-rated. There will be no GST on exports, and this has improved the competitiveness of exports of Indian goods and services. And it is also giving protection to domestic industry through levy of IGST on imports in addition to the customs duty. I have now come to the end of this presentation, and in case you want more information and material on GST, you may log in to this website and you will get all the information on GST. Thank you.
We all know that music has no boundaries. So with that, I would like to present to you a group performance by the second year cadets.
What's a celebration without some motion? Presenting to you Lai Shram Roshni, a solo dance performance.
और चारू मेर हुई झिलमिलाट थे आया मारा पावना के स्वागत करावे उपजी फुलवारी रे साजे गाजे बाजे गूंजे सपनोरी ये किलकारी रे वन उपवन अभिनंदन करता छाई घटा परियारी रे शक्कर भांको झांकी झांको हुई जश्न की ये तैयारी रे मन हर जाओ धन बरसाओ धन सुखवारो जी रे
आयो रे शुभ दिन आयो रे
When the spirit works with hand, it's art. Presenting to you a virtual pen alien presented by Cadet Arpita De, Pritam Chanda and Jayanta Chanda.
ए भारत तेरे बंदे हम मर जाएंगे पर न रुकेंगे ये कदम हम न तब रुके थे हम न अब रुकेंगे चाहे जो हो जाए कुछ कर दिखाएंगे There is this thing about freedom which we don't care much often. There are things we come across, mostly of which we choose to toss. Freedom lives there, and she chose to live without much care. And she shines in only those who are really there. She's not that clay which people love to spray, but she's that smile which comes without any try. She shines in the eyes of those who struggle to stop the cry. She lives in joy, which sparkles when the poor kid got its first star. It was the time after independence, what saw that some rules were needed. Rules needed to govern the country. That defines each and every deed for making our constitution. The best of Indian had got up. They travelled across many countries to make draft constitution. Constitution was fully enacted and adopted. It was signed by our president. It was accepted as it was opted. To preserve India's freedom in the constitution, being the largest constitution in the world, all it echoes is the unity in diversity of India. A constitution of the people, by the people, and for the people. जहाँ गोली खाकर सीने में भी हर जवान हंसता है। अरे तुम कहाँ तक कब्जा कर लोगे, यहाँ हर दिल में भारत बसता है।
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता। पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा। विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा। तब शुभ नामे जागे, तब शुभ आशीष मांगे। गाहे तब जय गाथा,